Testing one, two, three. Check, check. Miss Broder, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm so sorry.
Yes, I
My
can.
computer was on mute I don't know. Sorry about that.
No worries. All right. At this point, we'll have the chairman recognize you once the committee starts, but thank you so much for participating in the mic check.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
So apparently
Investigative Committee to order. Appreciate those that can make it being here today. I know there's a lot of others that'll be looking at us online or participating online today. Senator Gooch is sick. Senator Butler's out of town. Senator Dolezal's out of town. We have Senator Hatchett's going to participate online, and I'm not certain about our other members, but we'll be looking for whatever participation we can get. Appreciate those of you that made the effort to be here today, to be here. Thought I'd go ahead and announce the date of the next meeting so that everybody can calendar that. It's going to be Friday, September the 13th, Friday the 13th. And we'll be meeting at 10:30 in the morning. One reason we're doing that is to accommodate people like Senator Kennedy, Senator Jones, and I that have some distance to travel. Gooch coming down from Dahlonega to give us time to get in the morning without, being too bleary-eyed here, so we can pay attention to the testimony that we receive. Today, we've got a couple of things on our agenda. I have been wanting to hear from other district attorneys as to some of these rules and regulations and laws and operations of district attorneys' offices that we've been hearing a lot about how the Fulton County office operates. And there are several statutory provisions that control the use of special prosecutors, special grand juries, the budgeting ideas, and sort of the interaction of county governments with district attorneys. The entire notion of a district attorney being a constitutional office and having concurrently with that a certain amount of independence is important, but also it's important to have accountability, and these are creatures of state law. So we want to make sure that we're addressing concerns that citizens may have. With the theme for us to keep in mind is that what we're trying to do is to make certain that we can maintain the public confidence in the fairness and impartiality of our criminal justice system in Georgia. So I thought it would be good. I've had a number of DAs reach out to me with comments, concerns, criticisms over the last few months. I have also reached out to a number of district attorneys for advice for their counsel and some of the direction of this committee. And occurred to me that it would be really good for this committee and the public to hear from district attorneys that are confronted with the same dynamics and problems and concerns and challenges that the Fulton County District Attorney has been faced with. This morning we have Mr. Danny Porter, who is, we'll call him a retired district attorney from Gwinnett County, probably a very much happier man now than he has. Well, how many years you served? 30 or 40 years, wasn't it?
Almost 40 years as
Yeah.
a prosecutor and 27 as district attorney.
Wow. So he has a great insight and a little historical perspective and institutional knowledge on how district attorneys' offices operate, and particularly in a metro environment with Gwinnett County being his district. We also have Mr. Wrights Barksdale, who's with the Okmulgee Judicial Circuit. Got a little more youth than his compatriot here. And he's in a more rural environment in the Okmulgee Circuit, and probably less resources perhaps as some of the large metro DA's offices have. And Ms. Marie Broder is the district attorney down in the Griffin Judicial Circuit, is available with us by Zoom today. She wasn't able to be here. Marie, can you hear us okay? We can see you just fine.
I can hear y'all. Thank you for accommodating me. I'm out of town, so I appreciate being able to join y'all on Zoom. And I see Senator Kennedy there, who's my senator for Upson County. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everybody.
But we're glad to have you here. So we're going to start with essentially a panel discussion, and I'm going to ask some questions and invite input from all of the district attorneys, and we'll sort of take turn. I'll act more as a moderator, I suppose, on this. I have mentioned to each of you some of my areas of concern that I want to explore, and we'll start in that manner and let you all contribute to response to the concerns and issues I have, and then I'll give you some free time to sort of express any concerns that you may have or suggestions as to amendments to current laws for the enactment of new laws that might make your jobs easier and restore public confidence in the system. This is sworn testimony, so if I could swear each of you in, if you'd please raise your right hands. You swear the testimony you'll give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Right?
I do.
You all probably used to administering that oath more than you are to receiving it, but I truly do appreciate each of you being here. I wanted to begin by us explaining to the committee and to the public exactly how the district attorneys are funded. We know about our state appropriations, but I understand it to be more of a county supplemented state program. But Danny, you having served as director of Prosecuting Attorneys Council might be the one to start with, because that's where a lot of our money flows through. If we could get you to start by just explaining the overview, kind of the architecture of funding for district attorneys' offices, because I've been hearing back from a number of district attorneys that feel like they need more resources or don't have enough financial resources to provide the job, the duties that they're supposed to be doing as far as prosecuting and running these offices. So if you could just kind of give us the framework financially, how the state of Georgia and local counties fund district attorneys' offices.
Okay, I think an urban or suburban circuit like mine, which was a one county circuit, is a good example of the inadequacy of the state support, because there's a formula, and I don't know the exact formula today, but when I left in 2020, the funding formula that was passed by the legislature by law and then implemented by the Prosecuting Attorneys Council is that there's the district attorney, then you get one assistant DA per judge. So for instance, when I left, we had 11 judges in Gwinnett County. So that would have given me 11 assistant DAs. You get one investigator in the circuit for the entire circuit, and you get one secretary for the entire circuit.
Mr. Porter, would give us a little history of your service, because I know you from the years that you were here so active with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, but let the committee members and the general public who's clued in know about your history in the legal profession as a prosecutor and as a DA before I get you in any deeper, because you have the perspective here I think we need to appreciate.
I started with the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office in September of 1981, about 2 months after I graduated from law school. I paid my own way through law school, so I had to drive a truck to pay off the last of the debt. And then I went to work in Gwinnett County as an assistant DA. Over the years, there was a change in administration in 1984 from Democrat to Republican. I stayed on because I guess I was low enough on the totem pole that the axe didn't cut that deep. So I stayed on, and I worked for 12 years with Tom Lawler, who was the district attorney there. During that time, I took over various special prosecution units, including the drug unit, including we had an indictment unit then that drew all the indictments for the circuit to be assigned to the judges. So I rose to the level of chief assistant. And then in 1992, Lawler called me into his office and he said, if you want to keep a job here, you better run, because I'm. So I was dragged kicking and screaming into politics, and I was elected in 1992, and I took office in January of 1993. I was defeated in the election of 2020, and I was long eligible for retirement by that point. So I retired at the end of 2020.
Tell us about your involvement with PAC and explain what the Prosecutorial Attorneys Council is.
When I was elected district attorney, I was already friends with some of the folks that were not only on PAC, on the council, but also the administrative folks at PAC, like Pete Scandalakis and some of the folks. So I was asked to serve on what's called the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. That is a group of district attorneys and solicitors that are chosen by the memberships of the association. So for instance, The DA members are chosen by a vote of the District Attorneys Association, and the solicitor members are chosen by a vote of the Solicitor General's Association.
How large is that council?
Mr. Burstill's going to have to help me.
Right, we've got 3 solicitors, and I believe Marie is actually on the council. Is it 6 DAs or is it 5? She's muted.
Sorry. I believe it's 5, right?
Yeah, 3
Yeah.
solicitors and 5 district attorneys that make up the council.
I want folks to understand, I have always had the impression that you all are very independent of the legislature, that it's almost a self-run type organization, but we have given you certain authority to speak on behalf of all those DAs and solicitors. Am I right, or how does that work?
The prosecutor, the council sets policies that are written into a policy manual by the staff at Prosecuting Attorneys Council that govern to a certain extent the conduct of district attorneys. It generally deals with regulation of certain fiscal matters, which is how they handle state money.
Yes.
And that's by a combination of statute and a combination of policy that's promulgated by the council. There's some things the council absolutely cannot do. So for instance, if there was misconduct by a district attorney, there's no authority for the council to discipline or remove a district attorney. So basically the council sets policies about the spending of state money.
Mhm.
And Marie, being on the council, might be able to tell us more. I was the chairman of the council for 4 years. I was council for 4 years. The chairman's elected for 2-year terms. So I served 2 terms.
So I can remember you in that role, essentially lobbying us or testifying to us, or we would call on you on certain matters where your expertise as a prosecutor was helpful to us.
Correct.
And it seemed like you might have made budget presentations as well, or maybe we would ask you guys what you needed.
We would, the council usually would assign a district attorney who was interested in crunching numbers, because most of us aren't. Well, most of us are lawyers because we can't do math. So we usually had a district attorney and staff members to support the budget presentations. David Miller, who was the DA in Valdosta, was that DA when I was there, and then the DA in Dalton, who's now a judge, took over. I'm sorry, I don't recall,
It's okay.
but
So you
Mr.
would.
Chairman, if
would
I
meet
may,
with-
I need to correct my testimony if I may. I apologize. There's 6
Sure.
district attorneys on the council. When I was given the number, I forgot to include myself as a member on the council. So there are 6 DAs and 3 solicitor generals. I wanted to correct my testimony. I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's great. And we're going to leave you unmuted. So you join in anytime, Ms. Broder, if you'd like to, because it could help us. Since you're in an active role there on the budgeting, do you make a specific request to the governor for the, Office of Management Budget to put you in the budget and then come to the House and Senate Appropriations Committees to make sure we give you enough funding? How does that operate these days?
Marie, if I may.
Yeah, I was going to point to you anyway, right? I know you're I'm not very involved in the budgeting portion of it, Mr. Chairman. I mean, obviously I'm aware of what we present, but I will defer to DA Barksdale to answer this. I know he's a little more active in that role.
All right.
First, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council was, as I understand it, set up to assist district attorneys, both from an HR standpoint, training, and part of that HR is our budget. The DA that is over the DA program, so to speak, and is very involved in that is DA Herb Cranford from Coweta. I think it is important, Mr. Chairman, to understand that PAC has a budget,
Right.
and the DAs have a budget. It's separate. It's totally separate. So we've got a DA's program. and we've got the PAC budget.
What about solicitors? Is that under the same umbrella?
No, no,
Okay.
sir. As I understand it, I don't have much knowledge of it, so I'll say that first. But those solicitors, I believe, get almost all of their budget from the county.
All right. So when we're talking about you get assigned or funded for one assistant DA per judge, we're talking about superior court judges
Correct.
because DAs prosecute felonies, which are in superior court.
Correct.
And like you're talking about Gwinnett County, you wouldn't believe how many state court judges y'all have now. It's at least 10.
There's about 10.
Yeah, and they don't have any DA assigned to their courts because they're handling misdemeanors. They've got solicitors. That's fully county funded.
Correct.
from that. All right. But on the DAs, which are handling serious crimes, felonies, that's kind of the formula as far as the number of state funded positions.
Correct. Well, actually, to finish out the formula, it's one assistant DA per judge. And then over the years, there have been additional positions added that are state funded. One of them is a drug prosecutor. One of them is a
Juvenile.
It's in code in 15-1814 that lays out the formula. It's an ADA for every Superior Court judge plus 2, as I understand it. I've been given funding in addition to that for a juvenile prosecutor. I've also been given funding for a drug court prosecutor. I have 2 state paid secretaries. Every circuit in the state gets two secretaries. 1 investigator. My investigator happens to be right behind me because we're going to go serve subpoenas when we leave here.
Okay.
And
I got one I might need your help with.
but we also recently, and I don't know if y'all remember this, but recently you guys helped us out and gave us 1 state paid victim advocate.
Okay. So there's I've got the book. So I brought Title 15 with me so I could reference if I needed today. 15, 18, 19 deals with the salary schedules.
Yes, sir.
And down 15, 18, 19 E1 says the council, we're talking about PAC,
Correct.
shall establish salary schedules for each such state paid position authorized by this article or any other provision of law. And there's some minimums in here where we know what the minimum, but I had the impression that we have delegated to the prosecuting attorney's council the right to set the terms and conditions of employment, including the benefits and the salary schedule. And then you come seek the money from the state to fill your position, rather than us every year having to adjust the salaries of DAs and assistant DAs. Am I on track here, or educate me and our committee so we can know
I would
how
tell
it's
you,
done?
Mr. Chairman, that the particulars of that, so that I don't misstate anything, and I'm sure Pete is watching me.
He
But
is.
I would ask that Pete come and talk about the particulars of that, because he's going to know in more detail than I would as to that. I understand that when
He's the chairman now.
he's the director.
executive
He is the
director.
director. Peter Scandalakis is our director. And I believe that he and Chris Jones will be able to give you a better picture and the inner details of how that works.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this particular portion, I want to piggyback on something that Wright said that I think is important and kind of clear up if there is any confusion. So I have 4 counties in my circuit. It's a very interesting circuit. I have a relatively metro, I would consider it to be a metro county in Fayette County. Then you have Spalding County, which carries most of my crime. And then I have 2 very rural counties in Pike and Senator Kennedy's County, Upson. Okay, in Pike and Upson counties, my attorneys handle both felony and misdemeanors because there is not a solicitor general in either Pike or Upson County. So in Fayette and Spalding, my attorneys handle felonies. In Pike and Upson, they handle everything. And I think, Wright, your counties would be the same way. I also ran the numbers for the committee just to give you some insight into my budget. I have currently 46 employees, including myself this time. The state pays for 14 of those employees. So the counties are picking up everything else. And to break it down even further for you all on the committee, I have 15 attorneys, 10 are state paid. The others are paid for either by the counties or by a grant that we're currently getting that will expire at some point. I have 8 investigators. One of those is a state paid investigator. The rest are completely funded by the county. And that's where it really breaks down, is with your support staff. So for my victim advocates, I have 9 victim advocates. One of those is state paid. The rest are funded by a county or funded by a grant. And of note for the committee, our grants were slashed last year. I mean, slashed by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm very
Where do they
grateful for my
come from?
counties to step
Yes.
up.
The grants from the state or the federal government?
The federal grants. So
These
that's your VOCA and VAWA grants that we get. So those were cut, and I'm very blessed to have counties that stepped up and took on victim advocate positions. So I'm appreciative of that. And finally, and then I'll yield, but for my administrative assistants, I have 14 of those. 2 are state paid. The others are completely funded by the counties. So that's the breakdown of my circuit and how the funding works in my circuit.
So who decides how many employees you have then? The state has their formula, so to speak, per DA's office, regardless of population, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so you each, and we got 50 district attorneys in the state.
Correct.
If I got my numbers.
Yeah.
So even though we have 159 counties, some districts encompass more than one county.
Most of them,
Right.
sir. Most of them, yes.
These
A
big metro
lot
counties.
of
just-
the metro counties are mostly single circuit counties. There are some in the rural areas that are single county circuits. And, but yes, in the rural areas, I think Wright has the biggest geographical circuit in the state. You got 8 counties, right?
Right. To lay it out so that everybody kind of is on the same page. In my humble opinion, there's 3 revenue sources for district attorneys' offices. The first is from the state. The second is from the counties. And the third is from grants. And primarily the grant funding is going to be grants that are awarded to us by CJCC. When Ms. Broder was talking about the breakdown of her office, it's important to understand that every DA's office, for the most part, whether metro or county, those are going to be the 3 revenue sources primarily: grants, county, and the state.
What does CJCC stand for?
Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
And that's a federal agency?
The state agency
agency.
that administers federal grants. And I don't know how how members are selected. We've always worked with the staff. But to add to Wright's testimony, those are the three common revenue sources of every DA in the state. Whether you're a large metro county, whether you're a mixed county like a mixed circuit like Maria, or a predominantly rural circuit like Wright, those 3 are the bread and butter, so to speak. And some people have more bread and more butter than others. For instance, in my county, when I left, there were 142 total employees, 143 including me. I had to work the formula out, but I had 11 or 12, 13, 14 state paid assistants, and the remainder of the 42 attorneys were all county paid, and all of the state paid assistants received supplements.
Well, one reason I'm probing into this area is that there's apparently quite amount of largesse in some of the big counties.
Well,
They've got public relations departments and bodyguards and entourages and public awareness campaigns going on, things other than prosecuting criminals. And some of the more rural, poorer counties are like, dadgum, why don't we have these same resources? And it seems like it's because some of the wealthy counties are pouring money into, you know, criminal justice that the small counties can't do. I hate to see us have smaller counties that feel like they don't have enough personnel because their counties can't supplement, or they're not playing their politics well enough, or not on the right side of the blue or the red to be getting the federal grants coming down. You know, I'm worried about whether there's equity here, or it's just how good is Mr. Barksdale to go get funding from his you know, rural counties. Marie, I got the same problem you got. No, it's not a problem, but the Western Circuit where I'm based is Clark County and Oconee County.
Right.
Clark County has 2 state court judges and a solicitor's office that are prosecuting the misdemeanors. And then we got 4 Superior Court judges. And, you know, we have a DA's office that feels like they're understaffed. You know, you don't have enough authorized positions and then can't fill the ones they have. And then Oconee County next door in the same circuit doesn't have a state court. So the same DA's office is prosecuting misdemeanors and felonies in one county in the circuit and just felonies in the other. I don't know how common that is, but I bet it's common because counties are funding the state courts and the state court solicitors, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And to have a ex-state court solicitor, Senator Jones, on our committee. So he's my reference source there.
And if I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, to back up something that you just said about there not being equity, and I'm sorry, there's a bit of delay. So I'm kind of sitting back and recognizing
Okay.
that there is a delay. There are counties and there are circuits in this state that do not get very much county funding at all. And so they are very dependent on the state, especially I know you have several senators that have South Georgia circuits, and that's where we see it a lot, where the counties just can't. It's not that they don't want to, but they can't supplement the way that some other counties can, and in the North Georgia area too. So I just wanted to confirm that that is the case. Right, you may want to speak on it as well, but I mean, we hear that struggle from them quite a bit.
When the public hears about a DA's office having $1 million budgets or spending money, however the DA sees fit, I want to highlight the fact that out of 50 DAs, 40 of them are running on a very, very small budget, very, very small budget. And
What's your budget?
I've got a general operating account that the counties give me money to support my office, and that's outlined in 15-18-23, which basically says that the counties are to support the DA's offices for printers and copiers and that kind of stuff. I've got in the neighborhood, it fluctuates between $28,000 and $36,000 to do everything from if a copier goes down to buy technology to replacing the tires on a vehicle. So I do want to.
How many counties do you have?
I've got 8 counties. I've got Morgan County, Greene County, Jasper, Putnam, Hancock, Jones, Baldwin, and Wilkinson County.
So you go all the way from Lake Oconee down to Milledgeville.
I started my morning today in front of the commissioners in Greene County at 8:30, finished that budget presentation and drove straight here. I've got one of the poorest counties in the state of Georgia, and I've got per capita one of the wealthiest.
How many Superior Court judges in Okmulgee?
I've got 5 Superior Court judges. I guess it'd be a good time to give them some credit. All 5 of them are very, very good judges. Very pleased to have them.
So you got 5 assistant DAs that the state of Georgia funds, and your salary is funded by the state of Georgia
Plus two.
two.
plus 2.
One per judge plus 2 is the easiest way to figure it out.
Okay.
But then you've got a juvenile prosecutor and a drug court prosecutor.
Those are state funded.
Yes, sir.
And that is true in any county that has a juvenile court or a drug court.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Doesn't everybody have a juvenile court?
I believe they do now.
They do now, they didn't. That was coming right at the end of my term. There was a push to fund statewide juvenile courts along with a prosecutor now.
Okay.
But even that has exceptions because in Gwinnett, for instance, our juvenile court was completely county funded and they turned down the state money and they turned down, and I turned down the state assistant because there were provisions in the law about how that assistant DA could operate and what they could do. And I wanted to retain the freedom to assign different people into juvenile. I always staffed juvenile court, but I didn't always staff it with a state paid assistant DA.
Right.
And so I was using state paid money in conjunction with county money. I would estimate that probably 85 or 90% of my $16 million budget came from the county.
So right back to you. I'm doing my math. 5 judges plus 2 is 7, plus the 2 special courts. You got 9 assistant DAs from state funding.
Correct.
How many you got on top of that from your counties or federal grants?
Overall, I've got 33 employees, not just ADAs, but top to bottom, secretaries, victim advocates. I've got 33, and that includes me. 16, including me, 16 of the 33 are state funded. And that 2 of those, it's important to note that they are contracted, they're state employees, but they're contracted for child support. So my office handles child support, juvenile court, drug court, mental health court, and superior court. All but one of my counties, and that being Baldwin, we also have the responsibility of prosecuting misdemeanors.
What's the population of those 8 counties? Do you know?
It's hard to say because here, and I'm not trying to avoid that question, I've got 3 state prisons plus a juvenile detention facility, and I've got Lake Oconee and Lake Sinclair, and it depends on if it's the 4th of July, and I'm talking, we fluctuate in the thousands, to probably tens of thousands. I'd venture to say 160, give or take, is going to be where we're floating around in those 8 counties. And that's important because what Mr. Porter in Metro Atlanta or Savannah, the issues that they're dealing with are a lot different than some of the issues that I'm dealing with. We both have very difficult jobs, but what I want to highlight with what Mr. Porter said, there is really no accountability when the county gives us our budget. Now, for me, my budget from the county is going to be my general operating expense and the positions. I do not have a tax ID number. So my counties, there's a couple of counties that handle the HR side. Okay. But the accountability, when the public sees somebody, a DA or a DA's office spending money that they believe is inappropriate, understand that the county gave that money to the DA. And part of our job is to allocate that money appropriately. The oversight piece of that is the county can come in next year and say, we don't agree with that. But the public needs to understand the county commissioners that are giving large amounts of money to people that are spending it, however, they have culpability and responsibility to make sure that what's being spent is appropriate.
And is that their only leverage? Rob Pitts was here a couple of meetings ago and expressed some frustration with the lack of accountability from the Fulton County DA's office of where they spent millions and millions of dollars that have been allocated allegedly to catch up on the backlog in prosecutions from COVID days. And it's a little bit of that frustration that you're saying that you don't have to answer to them, except they may not give you money next year if you don't spend it for what they gave it to you for this year.
So to me, there's a couple of things that now will hold us accountable. Before I say that, I want to stress how important it is for me as the DA to make day-to-day decisions on how to operate my 8-county office. There's a couple of different ways in which I'm held accountable, though. One, obviously, every 4 years, I'm held accountable by the voters. Number 2, it is a real thing for me in my circuit. My counties are watching me like a hawk, and that's a good thing. I know that if I break their trust, that they can take away, and they have. Fred Bright was the DA that hired me. There was something happened, and Greene County took money away from us, and they took money away from us for a while. That did impact us in a negative way. So there is accountability there. And the third piece that myself and some other DAs worked alongside the legislature was this DA oversight committee. And,
Right,
and if you look at that, if we're talking about money being spent in a way that's just outlandish or inappropriate, it may fall under one of those categories where somebody can submit a complaint to that committee.
So, and that's just gone live, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. So,
But I want to
Sure.
contrast what Wright is saying, because like I said, when I left, my budget was $16 million. My understanding is my successor last year had a budget of $26 million, but it's all the county commission. Now, in my case, the law says, case law, out of a dispute between the sheriff in Spalding County and the county commission chair, the county commission chair tried to control the purchase of vehicles, and particularly the vehicle that the sheriff was driving. And the court ruled that once the commission appropriates the money in the budget to the elected official, it's the elected official's discretion to spend it as they choose. Now, of course, Wright's exactly right. The county could come back and say, you misspent money, and therefore we're going to cut that money out of your budget. In my case, they could also very well take away all the support they provide. So for instance, they could say, you do your own HR, you do your own retirement, you do your own benefits, you do your own insurance, your own car maintenance, your own everything. Buy your own. There was one DA who had to buy his own toilet paper because his county wouldn't support it. So, they wouldn't provide janitorial services. So that's really when you're at war with your commission. I didn't want to do all that. So what I did is voluntarily agree with the commissioners that I would abide by county budget regulations. So for instance, my budget went to the commission for positions and for pay on a pay scale that I set. And I told them I set it. It was approved by HR. We hired under that pay scale, and it was transparent to the county commission. And so I always abided by the county budget regulations voluntarily, because I didn't want to do my own HR. I didn't want to do my own maintenance. I didn't want to do all the things that the county could do. And some of you may know Charlotte Nash, who was the county commission chair for a lot of the years that I was district attorney. To call her a hard-nosed negotiator is a small compliment. And so she and I and the county administrator I would make the budget presentation to them, and we would negotiate how it was going to be, because I understood. And Charlotte told me more than once, you screw around, I'm going to start taking money out of your budget. So I didn't. So it's what we really need to stress, and I think all three of us need to stress, is every single one of the 50 DAs in the state handle their funding differently. But we have broad outlines and broad, I wouldn't call them regulations, but some of us, like me, agreed totally with the idea that we wanted to work within the county budgeting system. Some don't. Some take their money and go home. And there's in fact, the legal authority for that is stronger than legal authority for controlling the budget. Right now, we're like every other elected official, that the sheriff, the district attorney, all of those constitutional officers are given an appropriation and have the right to spend it any way they want.
So what money is distributed or allocated by the prosecuting attorney's council? There's money,
The state funds that are
we
allocated by
appropriate money directly to,
prosecuting
yeah.
attorney's council.
what happens to that money that we give back?
Some of that money goes into the actual PAC budget, the prosecuting attorney's council budget. That budget is then approved by the council. And that involves salaries for employees. It involves training costs, and it involves, they have to do certain housekeeping things too, maintenance, general operating expenses, rent, vehicle maintenance, all the things that any other state agency does. And so that money is allocated by the executive director. It is, it's voted on by the council, the budget is. Then there's the DA budget. The DA budget basically pays the salary. It does all the salary and benefits for state paid employees, including district attorneys. So that money is allocated in accordance with law, by the set salaries. And it also is distributed. Benefits are paid for, retirement funds are put into their accounts.
Okay.
So
So
that's
let me, I'm not going to spend this whole meeting on
this-
budgets, but I wanted to make sure we understood the funding sources and kind of how it goes. And I know you got something you want to say, right? I'm going to tell you all a
Yeah.
couple areas I want you to give me some flesh out for me. Go ahead and ask your question.
No,
first, right?
I just want to you asked about the state budget,
Yeah.
and I asked Pete about that 99% of the DA program budget. 99% is tied up in salaries. So I just want to make sure you knew, when you
And-
say where does that money go? 99% of it.
What does the state pay in salary per DA?
I know that I make a little over 130. I think it's 133.
From the state of Georgia?
Right. That can vary if you don't have a drug court,
Right.
because I believe I get 5 or
Supplement,
6
yeah.
for having a drug court.
I was on the criminal judicial council. I forgot what we were called, Nathan Deal's thing. And we were trying to incentivize counties to do drug courts, and that was the carrot.
right,
And so everybody took the carrot,
right.
which
We
is good,
appreciate it,
public
yeah.
policy, because now we got drug courts addressing those issues in every circuit. I believe every single circuit. So is that salary, let's call it 133, that is the same in every circuit, correct? The state funded portion.
The state funded portion is the same for every single DA. I do want to provide context. It is the lowest pay in the Southeast.
It's good to know.
And I think that's important. I just want this committee to understand that
You're
all
not
of our-
whining, you're just educating.
I'm doing both. I'm doing both.
You're doing great. All right, now, on top of that, do counties supplement district attorney salaries?
Some.
Mhm.
Good. Okay,
So for instance, when I left, at that time, the DA salary was $128,000. And I made a $48,000 supplement from the county.
very similar to Superior Court judges.
Correct.
What do y'all think about the fairness of that? You're the poor boy from the country. Rhea, I
I'll
don't know what
speak
you
on-
make.
Yeah, I'll speak
Y'all
on this,
working
Mr.
hard.
Chairman. Here's the thing, and I kind of want to comment on a couple of things that have been said, but that's not true across the state. Counties are not supplementing their district attorneys across the state. I get a very small supplement of just around $15,000 from all four. That's 4 counties combined. So that's my supplement from all 4 counties. I also want to make this point, and I think it's important for the committee and for the people to understand, our people that are voting out there, is that these DA's offices, like Mr. Porter said, run very, very differently. A lot of your Metro DA's offices run very much like a large size law firm. And I don't mean to sound like a country girl here, but I think it's important that our circuits, like me and Wright and the Vic McNeeses of the world that are out here, we're running like my dad's cattle farm. Okay. Things have to be done. He gets up and he's the one that does it. Now he has people that help him, but he's getting in there and he's doing it. Right now, and even Danny, you were still trying cases. We're still trying cases out there. I mean, I'm trying a case at the end of August. I'm trying a murder case down in Upson County, because when the judges come in and they schedule court all over the place and everybody's in trial, I'm getting in there and trying the cases. So I wanted the committee to understand that it's very different around the rest of the state. And I did want to humanize a little bit of the load that we're asking our ADAs to carry, the ADAs that are getting paid on this scale that frankly is very low. I mean, my ADAs down in Upson County are carrying a caseload of around 600 cases. In Spalding County, they're hovering around 600 as well. And in Fayette, they're way above 500, and that's their caseload. And that's very high.
Per assistant DA.
Yes, that's
per
the average.
yeah.
That's the average. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate because we have case assignments according to judges, and then my ADAs are assigned to a team with a judge. But that's the average. That's about where they're hovering, and that's just, it's a lot. But I mean, I've already asked so much of my counties, and so we're doing what we need to do. But I wanted to throw that in there to kind of humanize it a little bit for y'all before we moved on from this topic.
No, that's good, because we hear feedback that some of the Metro DAs are making 200,000 or plus per year. And that's when I realized this isn't the same statewide, because that's significantly above what the state pay is. And I don't know if the state pay is triggered on, certain percentage. It seemed like it used to be whatever the Superior Court judge his state pay was, it was going to be
90%.
either 90% of that. But we're looking at changing the pay of Superior Court judges. And I think the legislature needs to know you're also talking about 50 DAs are about to get a raise too. I'm not criticizing that, right? I think we ought to pay y'all more, but
I don't know if
wonder.
that's still in effect, but
I don't know either,
Mr.
but
Scanlakis
we need to
would
know. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was a trickle down. Once you raise the Superior Court, at least in Gwinnett County, once you raise the Superior Court judge's salary, it trickled down.
Right. Did the supplements as well?
No,
The state law
it
wouldn't apply to that.
It
Probably.
depends.
Okay. Depending on your politics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Retirement money. I've got the code in front of me, and it basically says district attorneys or who are members of either the district attorney's retirement system or the employees retirement system of Georgia be entitled to receive service and sick leave, et cetera, et cetera. So where do your people go? I mean, district attorneys, I guess, have your own separate retirement system if you want to participate in it.
We are part of
The judicial retirement.
the
Judicial retirement?
JRS,
Okay.
and that is based on years of service.
All right. And that
That's fine.
covers both the elected district attorney and your assistant DAs,
No, sir.
just the elected.
Just elect the elected.
Where's everybody else go to the state?
ERS.
ERS? All right. So what about the county funded positions? Do they get retirement through ERS, or does the county have to fund them?
The county will fund that unless, and this is one thing that we've not talked about, and there's a code section for it that explains it. They're what's called spacer employees, state paid, county reimbursed.
All right.
All right. And what's attractive about those employees for a lot of my counties is it takes the liability, like health insurance and benefit package, off the county. So those employees are receiving a state paycheck, state retirement, state health insurance, but the counties then turn around and write the prosecuting attorney's council a check for reimbursement.
Okay. So that's monitored through the PAC.
Right.
It's one of its duties. Okay.
Right.
Now, I also know, and I'm still stuck here on 15, 18, 19 for my lawyers up here that are keeping up. The PAC sets forth all the sort of uniform policies, rules, regulations, et cetera, for employees. And I don't know whether that's voted on by the DAs or adopted, but I want to believe that these policies and procedures for employees of district attorney's offices are uniform statewide. But I don't know. Are they? Are you required to comply with what the council has put out as what they ought to be?
I know that the Prosecuting Attorneys Council puts out a best practices suggestion.
Okay.
But I want to highlight again how different some of these offices are set up based on the individual needs. The DA's offices, honestly, are kind of like Georgia as a state. You got Atlanta and everybody else. And I say that with all due respect. Everybody's got pros and cons, but I don't know that you could put in place policies and procedures that would apply to my office that would be a great idea for a metro office, because it's just night and day. I've got 8 counties. I've got people riding all over the place, covering court every which way. It's just a really tough thing. For example, I thought about implementing a time clock for all my employees. And then when I realized how difficult that might be and expensive, we chose not to do that. I let one of my attorneys, who's got 30 years worth of experience, work from home 1 day a week. I've got to monitor that on our tracker system and make sure she's doing what she's supposed to do. But in a small area like I operate in, it's difficult sometimes. I don't mean any offense to Irwinton, Georgia. I love Irwinton, Georgia. I grew up 30 minutes from there. But I don't know how many people in the room right now want to live in Irwinton, Georgia and work there. And so the struggle I have is I've got people that work for me that live in Athens and Macon. If you take Brad Rigby's circuit down in below Houston County, I mean, he's got some places that the Dollar General is the Wally World. I mean, it's it. So when you talk about these procedures that PAC or somebody could try to put in place for the offices, I think you would have a very difficult time crafting policies and procedures for each individual office because we're operating so differently.
Well, but the council does put out policy and procedures, and there is a policy and procedure manual, but it deals primarily with fiscal issues. For instance, there was a problem with absenteeism at one of the trainings long ago, but it was a training issue, and there was a problem with people who would sign up for classes that they didn't go to and try and get CLE credit for it. And the council members, the PAC staff all recognized it. So we passed a rule that said you had to go to 85% of the classes before you could claim reimbursement. That rule was enforced by the staff at PAC. If they can report to the council that there's a violation of that rule, then the council will go to the DA and demand repayment of the reimbursement. That's where the problem comes in terms of the council's authority is if the DA tells the council to go pound sand, then there's no enforcement of that policy. There's no way to enforce the policy.
I'm picking up on that because subject to the provisions of this chapter, we're in Title 15, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of the State of Georgia shall, with the advice and consent of a majority of the district attorneys, adopt and amend uniform policies, rules, and regulations which shall apply to all state-paid personnel employed by the district attorneys. And then it lists all the many, many, many things you've got that authority to do. So that reads to me like the state of Georgia has delegated to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, who can only act with the consent of at least a majority of the 50 district attorneys, the power to do these rules, but they're only applying to the state paid employees, which y'all have all designated are maybe less than 50%. And the rules and regulations I'm worried about are ethical behavior of district attorneys and their assistant district attorneys. Mm-hmm. I think every citizen in Georgia ought to have some guarantee, some expectation of what that's going to be, what's proper, what's inappropriate, And who's going to set that up? Because, we're allowing the prosecutors and attorneys council to do it. And all our oversight is at the bottom of this, it said any rule, regulation, or amendment to these shall be presented to the officers of the Judiciary Committee of the House and the Senate. Well, I'm an officer. I'm vice chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I don't remember anybody from PAC ever showing me rules and regulations or changes for me to be advised of. And I guess we don't have power to approve them or disapprove them.
No, sir, you
We're
don't.
just put on notice of them so that if we disagree, if the inmates are running, the asylum here, then we maybe ought to be stepping in here. And that's part of the role of this committee, is to recommend if we need uniform state laws and procedures, ethical boundaries, guardrails, or whatever, or fair pay or whatnot. I'm processing this in my head, how it works. And that's kind of what I'm getting, is that we have delegated it basically to the district attorneys who are acting through PAC.
I would agree. I would agree with that, but I think when the statute was passed, it stopped short of building in any enforcement.
True.
And so I think over the years, the council has taken the position that all we can control is the money, which is a similar position that the county commissions are in, is that their enforcement is the fiscal matter. So the rules, which I did leave out the step there, the council proposes the rule changes, or the staff at PAC proposes a rule change, and it's submitted now electronically for a vote of the DAs. And then if they don't all approve, it was more common to have,
So what if 26 approve? Are all 50 bound by it, or are
Yes.
these non-binding guidelines?
well, they're as binding as the enforcement power that the council is given.
Which
So
is very limited.
yeah, there's really no, you can talk about, oh, you can cut their money off. But for instance, how do you collect money that's owed? Is the council the entity that is supposed to sue the district attorney to get reimbursed on payment of training expenses that were abused? There's no thought to what goes beyond the finding of impropriety.
Yeah, I wanted to add that one of the ways that PAC, when I came into office, there was a large bill that my office owed. And Pete was very, very kind. But it was understood that if I didn't settle that debt, that all of my spacer employees would be cut off. They weren't going to agree to do that. So we nickel and dimed ourselves to pay that. As the DA of a circuit that is primarily rural, I don't believe I have a whole lot of say at all. And what I mean by that is, just like when we sustained those large cuts in our grant funding that funded our victim advocates, I was just told, right, you're going from 300 and something, a little over 350,000 down to 170. And Pete and the PAC staff will tell you that I had a conniption over it.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have as much influence as one would think as it pertains to HR, budget, money. I just don't. But as to misconduct, as to questionable behavior, and I understand that it is just now getting off the ground, but 15-18-32 subsection H outlines 6 different ways, and willful misconduct in office is one of them. Willful and persistent failure to carry out your duties pursuant to 15-18-6. Knowing conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice, which brings the office into disrepute. We now have, in my humble opinion, more guardrails than we've ever had. And I think that was
Those
the
statutory or through that council?
that
guardrails.
15-18-32.
Okay.
I will tell this entire committee, and I've told numerous people, I don't work for PAC. And PAC provides a lot of resources. If you look at the legislative intent of why PAC was created, PAC was truly created to be a resource for district attorneys. PAC's influence has expanded in a lot of different ways, from conflict attorneys that they recently took over, training, HR, and you've got the council, you do. But I believe that who holds us accountable is the voters, and also here right now is the oversight bill. And that may, as it continues to roll out, need to be tweaked.
Right.
One of the things that I think should be included in that is assistant district attorneys, not just district attorneys, but assistant district attorneys.
Sure.
Uh,
Any prosecutor, really.
Right. And there's a whole nother subsection, as you know, as it pertains to charging, that whether or not to charge a case. And, you know, it outlines the ways in which you might get in hot water for charging a case. If there's a conflict of interest or a financial benefit at hand, so forth. So I think from a statutory standpoint, we're in a better position than we've ever been as a state, as a community, to ensure that DAs are doing what they're supposed to do and not misbehaving.
Do you
If I may
count
jump in,
yourself-
Mr. Chairman, and piggyback on what Wright just said, because I think that this is important. I do have a policy and procedures, manual that my employees have to sign when they come and work for me. And it is tailored to my circuit, and it's very detailed. I did that when I became a district attorney, and I think I want to push back a little bit in an extremely respectful way, Mr. Chairman, on the idea that there are those of us out there that aren't doing that. Most of us, Chairman, most of us out here are keeping our head down, doing our jobs, serving the public, trying the cases, moving cases, making sure a case doesn't sit for years and years before a victim finds justice. And I just wanted to fight a little bit for those of us out here who are doing that. And we might be quieter and you might not hear from us necessarily. And I think that's why it's important that we're sitting in front of you today, because that just means we're working. And so I just wanted to put that out there. And the reality of the budgets that we're operating under and the constraints that we're operating under, I mean, my employees in Spalding County were frustrated because they had to share a box of paper clips. I mean, this is real life stuff that we're fighting for every day. I mean, we fight for every penny that we get to support our employees, yes, but also support the taxpayers and support the citizens of the circuits that we serve. And so I just wanted that to be part of my testimony today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, so
And just to
yeah.
be sure, from a large metro county, I had a policy and procedure manual. It outlined not only procedures like county cars and guns, and so it was partially for liability purposes, but it had a code of conduct, and I would enforce it.
did you feel bound by that? That's a county policy, not your DA.
No, it's a DA policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of you feel like the county in which you serve can impose any employee policies on you?
They do.
For the county employees, they can.
Okay, and you have this blend of state employees and county employees. Okay. Why would you ever want to treat them differently? You're going to treat your state paid assistant district attorneys differently, the standards of conduct, et cetera, than your county paid?
I didn't.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you think the county can impose those duties on you? They're having this battle in Fulton County. The Madam DA in Fulton County says she ain't got to do what Fulton County tells her to do with whistleblowers, with treatment of employees or anything, because she is a constitutional officer. She can set her own darn policies. Do other DAs feel like you're bound by county policies and procedures on employment?
No, I never felt like I was bound by I was bound by my word that I would agree to that my employees would submit to it. And there were times when something came out of the county that I thought was stupid. And I said, we're not going to do that. And I exercised. So, in a way, based on the case law, the district attorney in Fulton County is correct, that they can't, and there's no mechanism in either state law or the case law that allows the county to impose its will on an elected constitutional officer.
Can they make you treat county paid employees in accordance with county's policies, including nepotism, and
No,
they cannot?
no.
Then maybe we need a state law to impose this on you people, so y'all treat our employees fairly. We're paying for all of them, one way or the other. Citizens are,
Well,
either through county funds or state funds.
If I may interject here, just.
See, this attention I'm trying to bring out, because there is. Constitutional officers want to run their show and not be told by county governments how to do it. State government's not telling you how to do it. Y'all are saying we're kings, we can do what we want to do, you just got to trust us.
One thing that
Right, can I jump
Marie,
in
go
really
on.
quick? Yeah, and answer your question. And because I want to highlight something here, Mr. Chairman, that I think is very important for the commission to understand. I have one county employee. That's it. And that's because she retired from the state and she could not receive state benefits. So I went to Spalding County and begged them to hire her on as a county employee. That's my only county employee. The other ways that they're funded, and I think this is where maybe some confusion comes in, is the rest of mine are state paid, county reimbursed. They're either state paid or they're state paid, county reimbursed, meaning that PAC pays their salary and I reimburse PAC either with grant funding for my victim advocates or my investigators, or with county money that the county gives me to then reimburse PAC. So a
So
lot
does
of
that make them a state employee or a county employee?
state employees, sir,
If they're state. So all of your people are state, even if they're paid by the county,
except
state
for
paid,
one.
county.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. I needed to clarify that. So that's how a lot of us operate out here. A lot of us don't have a lot of county employees. So I think this is a more isolated problem than you're going to see across the state, because most of my employees, like I said, are state employees. They receive state benefits, but the county has agreed to reimburse the state for them to have those benefits. It's easier on your smaller counties because they don't have to carry the actual employee. They just give the money over and then the state gets it from them. So I wanted to make that clarification, right? I don't know how many actual county employees you have, but I only have one. So that really wouldn't be, and that happened this year. So that wouldn't be a problem in my circuit.
the issue that, and I hear what you're saying. First, I want to tell you, I'm not a king, and my wife reminds me of that on a daily basis. All right. The problem that I have, and I'm fine. Look, I'm fine with whatever. It doesn't bother me. The problem I have is I have 8 counties, and I'll use an example. There are certain holidays where Jones County and Wilkinson County take the holiday, but Greene and Putnam and Hancock County don't. And so if I get 8 counties with 8 different operating and procedures or how employees do, most of my county employees have to sign certain county handbooks and that kind of thing. And I'll tell you, that's the complicating issue. If I had my magic wand, how would this all improve and be great? Is that for the DA's offices to be 100% funded by the state of Georgia. Practically speaking, that would be an astronomical price tag. But that would be a wonderful thing for me in my office, because right now what you're highlighting is why I started to have gray hair. Is I've got 8 county budgets, 8 county sets of county commissioners. I've got the state legislature. I've got PAC. I've got, a lot of people. And when you get a lot of people in the room, it's very difficult at times because they may define things differently. And it's hard to comply with whatever that is. I'll tell you this. I did not fire her. I asked her to resign. My best trial attorney. I asked her to resign because I caught her in a lie. to one of my judges. I will tell you that I personally have had to make a tough decision as it pertains to my employees. I had one test positive for THC, fired her on the spot. There are time and time again where we've got to make tough decisions. I'm certainly fine with oversight, but to have a clear set of directives is what I'm asking. I can only speak for me. What are those directives?
And that's kind of what I'm probing, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate here with y'all. You know, don't perceive me as being antagonistic. I'm very concerned that we don't have any universal, consistent codes of conduct for prosecutors. What are the ethical guidelines? What are the fair expectations of our citizens? And I'm seeing the reason is because, as far as I can tell, they're only bound by the disciplinary rules and ethical guidelines of the State Bar of Georgia that apply to all attorneys. I don't see where PAC has ever enacted any. And what I'm hearing is, even if you do, you can't enforce them. And I'm hearing you also say counties can't enact them on us because we're kings and queens. And I'm saying that joking. You are constitutional officers. You are elected by citizens. Your positions are created by the Constitution. And for good cause, you need to have independence. You know, Senator Jones would agree with me as an ex-solicitor. You don't need us meddling in your business. But as far as ethical guidelines and expectations, what the public deserves so that they can have a feeling that they're going to get fair and impartial treatment in the criminal justice system, which to me is more important than the civil justice system where we're just trying to sue you for money. The criminal system, we're going to put you in jail and take your money as a fine. You ought to have an expectation that the people in there that are prosecuting you and the judges that are ruling over the cases are going to be bound by universally accepted and understood ethical guidelines, and that the guardrails, as we're talking about.
Senator, I had left before the passage of the oversight bill.
Right. It's brand new.
It's
Yeah.
brand new, and I'm hopeful that it will develop into something as robust as the Judicial Qualifications Commission, the JQC, which does enforce ethical and conduct guidelines against judges and has been very successful with it. And I'm hopeful that this age, and now a lot of DAs don't support it, but if you remember back when the JQC started, there were a lot of judges who didn't support it because no constitutional officer willingly submits to a limitation or of the authority they're granted by the Constitution. Nobody wants to do that. So yeah. I'm not arguing against guardrails.
I know, but you're helping flesh out what's an underlying tension, particularly in Fulton County. Can
Right.
Fulton County impose ethical guidelines on prosecutors?
It would be my opinion based on the case law that no, they
Right.
can't.
And
Uh,
I also
when you
want to
talk-
highlight, I want to highlight, Danny, real quick too, that I just want to reiterate that that's a single county. So for those of us, if you said the county can start implementing their particular restrictions on the district attorney, you got to think I'm over here with Fayette County, who has a very different set of needs than my Pike County or my Upson County people. And I want to reiterate and back right up on something because I think this is important. When it's budget time, for those of us with multiple counties, I'm going to the Fayette County County Manager, the Spalding County County Manager, Pike County, and Upson County, and I'm meeting with all of them and then presenting to the commissioners that want me to present to them. So I'm getting checked at the state level. I'm getting checked at the county level. I'm getting checked, all over the place. So I just, and I know Wright's the same way. So I just want to kind of draw back the lens a little bit from just a single county. Sorry, Danny, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I have been thinking about that as well. So one of the other issues that's come up is procurement guidelines. County personnel guidelines, we just discussed, is about as deep as we can get. We can't solve that problem today, but we can highlight that is a problem. The other is county procurement guidelines. There was an audit done in Fulton County recently, which was highly critical of the district attorney's office. And part of the reason is that the district attorney's office essentially wrote them a letter saying, we've got prosecutorial discretion that allows us to hire any expert witnesses or special prosecutors that we want to. And you can't tell us what to do. And there's some worry in Fulton County that DA's office has extended that to buying other goods and services, that they don't have to have fair bidding process, procedures in place or whatever, that they can do what they want because they're not bound by those procurement processes, even though they're funding all of that peripheral spend, everything other than salaries. And I'd love any feedback y'all have on that, is what input should or can a county have on you in the procurement policies?
Well, as the former representative of a large county, I would say that I was pretty typical of people of my generation, is that we voluntarily submitted to follow P-card usage guidelines that were promulgated by the county, purchasing rules. And in fact, they have a purchasing department that you just say, I need a computer, and you call them up, and then they do all the bidding and searching for other items. Now, if you ask me under current law, could I have been forced to do that? My answer would be probably not.
Okay. Well, that's what Dexter Bond, and who's kind of the number 2 guy in Bonnie Willis's office, said. He wrote to the auditors in Fulton County and said, the ability to contract these services are left to our own discretion, and no one has the authority to challenge this discretion. Basically, go take a flying leap, Fulton County. I'm going to do what I want with my procurement. And you think legally she's right. You could do that, maybe not politically wise, but
right. I mean, I think legally that under current law, that is a somewhat inartfully put, but correct position. But I think he's right.
Okay. So my next one is on special prosecutors, and then I'm going to let Senator Jones ask some questions before we leave this topic. Does that suit you, Harold? On the special prosecutors, I believe this is under 15, 18, 20, right? You got the code there apparently in front of you too, when hiring the district attorneys and deputy district attorneys and other attorneys, investigators, or whatever, is covered by that code section. And subsection B says, personnel employed by the district attorney pursuant to this code section shall serve at the pleasure of the district attorney. So now we're back to prosecutorial discretion. It makes a whole lot of sense if you're going to hire an expert witness or a prosecutor or whatever, and shall be compensated by the county or counties comprising the judicial circuit. The manner and the amount of compensation to be paid is to be fixed either by a local act or by the district attorney with the approval of the county or counties comprising the judicial circuit. That is being interpreted by Fulton County, that they had the power to approve the $700,000 that Mr. Wade has made, but they weren't allowed to. It's been interpreted by the DA in Fulton County that I'll pay them whatever I want to pay them and hire who I want to pay. Do you guys have views on how that, what checks and balances does a county have in your use of a special prosecutor? Let's talk a little bit about funding for them. How is that ordinarily done? Danny, you've told me, I know PAC has a system in place to provide prosecutors. If you could walk me through how that works, and then I want views of all of you on, is there any check and balance on what a DA does as far as hiring special prosecutors and paying them? And we've got a special prosecutor here in Fulton County that's made 3 times what the DA makes. Wow. And this just, I'll start with you because you got the seniority.
I have to plead ignorance on the special prosecutor because I never used one in all the time.
In your 40 years, never ever. used a
I
special?
never, my predecessors, I never saw one in the office and I've never used one. So
How about you other guys? Have y'all, other DAs ever used a special prosecutor or know of that being done in
Yes.
counties near you?
So in talking to some of my fellow DAs, it appears to me that at least in smaller offices, there are two ways in which you would see a special prosecutor come in. And one of them is, I say free loosely, it's already paid for by the taxpayer dollars. PAC has a branch within itself of a team of attorneys. Sheila Ross is a special, she's an attorney that goes around the state. She's handling the murder case in Athens of the UGA student, but her specialty is death penalty work. We did not call her in to help us officially with our 2 death penalty cases that we tried over the last 3 years, but we certainly used her as a resource. PAC has an elder abuse prosecutor. They have an animal cruelty prosecutor. They have a RICO specialist. Prosecutors, DAs can contact PAC and at no cost to them request PAC's assistance for additional attorneys within PAC's organization. That's one way.
Are those additional attorneys employed by PAC or are they just at other district attorney's office and developed
No.
expertise?
No, they are within PAC and within PAC's budget, which is separate and apart
So
from the
they've
DA.
got another little pack of attorneys there
Correct.
that are like glorified assistant DAs with specialties.
You still have to swear them in.
a special prosecutor.
I've used it one time officially, and that was on a big RICO case out of Jones County. We brought in a PAC attorney, swore him in. His name was John Reagan. Another way that you will see DAs use special prosecutors is somebody, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the name, but Michael Lambros, and what he specializes, he's not with PAC, but what Lambros does and markets himself as is having a specialty with civil forfeiture proceedings. I've never used him, but he has gone around the state and developed a reputation of having an expertise in that. Some of those cases are very complex, and those district attorneys can either hire him per hour. And I think, again, I've never used him, a percentage of whatever the settlement is on the civil forfeiture. I've never hired somebody, a third party. I can only talk from my experience. If I did that, one, I'd have to have the money, which I don't, to do that. But if I did, it would be somebody that had a special skill set that I myself did not have or did not have within my office. It would be somebody that was very, very experienced at whatever the type case we were prosecuting.
And Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah,
could,
go right ahead.
if you're talking about special prosecutors as conflict counsel, which is you declare a conflict,
That's a whole different type than what we've talked about so far.
right, independently hired. I want to correct my testimony. I've used conflict counsel.
Tell us what would create a conflict. Give us an example of how you.
For instance, we discovered in an initial investigation that a judge was involved in a criminal activity in the later years of my term. I immediately called GBI to do the investigation, and then prosecuting attorney's counsel, I declared a conflict, which basically
You
means
said you had a conflict.
I had a
because you
conflict
buddies
because it
with
was a
that judge
judge.
or whatever.
correct. And then they sent employees of prosecuting attorney's counsel, and I swore them in as special assistant DAs. And I've done that
That's done.
maybe
time.
5 times over the 27 years.
Okay, got it. That's a different type of special prosecutor. That's
Right.
a prosecutor provided by PAC if the local DA's office has a conflict.
Correct. But I've never hired
Yeah.
an expert prosecutor that is there to be like an assistant DA that has a skill set that like John Floyd is a RICO specialist.
So back to the special prosecutors, PAC also has people that they can provide or recommend if you need special expertise or don't have enough manpower. to do
Correct.
that in your office.
And they'll do it through the same, you just request the special prosecutor. And that's something that has developed since I was the chairman, but we were in the process of developing expertise through hiring.
And when you say it's free, you're just saying it's not coming out of your budget. You don't have to go beg counties for money. That is state funded
Correct.
through an appropriation to PAC.
That is correct.
Marie, have you ever used a special prosecutor?
Same, no, I won't belabor the point, Mr. Chairman. No, I've never used one other than through PAC. Right now, PAC is handling a case along with the Attorney General's office in conjunction with my office. But again, that's no cost any additional cost to my county. So no, I've never brought in somebody from the outside. It's always been from PAC. If I had a conflict, for example, a family member was the victim of theft, then another DA's office came in and helped out with that case. But those are the only circumstances where I've used anything like that.
I mean, sometimes in the conflict cases, Pete will ask another DA or
Right.
say me as a retired DA to go on the conflict case.
And on those type of cases, the local DA doesn't have to pay you. You're paid by PAC.
I'm paid by guy.
All right. So,
The princely sum of $58 an hour.
all right. That's, you should work in Fulton County. Couldn't resist. All right. What time we got? Senator Jones, would you like to ask some questions now or take a break? All right, I'm gonna turn the mic over to Senator Harold Jones, who has the privilege as minority member to ask questions as well, and I'm gonna let him flesh out. If we can limit it to the subject matters that we've covered so far, then we'll take us a lunch break and come back. And I really do want to talk about special grand juries before we let you guys go. And there may be other topics, and Senator Jones, you can confer with me too. We'll, while we have this brain power here before us, let's utilize them. All right.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
I just only had a couple, Mr. Chair. One of them was, other than total state funding, has there been any conversation about changing the formula that we use on funding you guys from a state perspective? Because if you're basing it on the number of judges, you get the ADA on number of judges, which is based on their workload assessment, which is to me, very flawed about how that process works, which then is going to impact the number of people that you have. Have you guys had any internal conversation about changing that kind of formula, how we would do that to get you more people?
I can't speak for everybody. There's 50 DAs and PAC. I would welcome that. I know that there's been sidebar conversations. There's been some conversations in DA meetings. I think that the structure, I'm only speaking for me, the structure that you speak of is outdated and certainly needs to be revisited.
During the time that I was the chairman of PAC and was working with PAC, there were several proposals that were floated by some of the committees or some of the leading members of the legislature. And there was not a lot of interest. So what we've traditionally done is work within the framework of the scheduling or the numbers, the formula, so to speak, and try and raise DA salaries or raise assistant DA salaries and obtain more people under the formula.
I want to add to that, that right now, starting salary on the state scale for assistant district attorneys is at $58,000. And so I just heard one of my fellow DAs in the back of my head want to point that out, because if y'all were to give us more positions, we would gladly take them and be thankful for that. But I think we also have to understand, again, going back to Irwinton, Georgia, who wants to come to Irwinton, Georgia for $58,000 when they got $100,000 in student debt? So part of that and trying to figure out how to work this is going to be the competitive pay piece. And yes, I've got attorneys right now that are sitting there with 200 cases apiece. And it's just, when you have that kind of caseload, it's very difficult to provide the services that we want to provide, that y'all want us to provide, and the time. I walked in yesterday and watched one of my advocates spend over an hour on a misdemeanor case with a victim. And she's got hundreds of cases herself. So there's just a lot there to unpack.
Absolutely. Anyone else? My second question was, it seemed like District Attorney Porter, when you were talking about the +2, you mentioned about not actually wanting a position because the way it was going to be structured or kind of restricted, it seemed like the juvenile position. Would you like to see any kind of loosening on those restrictions, whether it's a drug court prosecutor, juvenile prosecutor, or maybe not, or just give you a +2 and let you guys determine how you want to use that +2 from that standpoint? So you wouldn't have to say, I don't want the position because the restrictions are just going to stop me from doing what I want to do.
I think in certain circumstances, it would probably be better just to allocate a position, an assistant district attorney position, so that the district attorney, but you always have to guarantee that the drug court is staffed and that was the interest of the legislature. The drug court is staffed, the juvenile court is staffed as adequately as the state provides. And so I think it's hard not to, because some, with the juvenile court, for instance, some counties had to get a juvenile court started in order to qualify for the position. So they had to create a juvenile court because it wasn't in the county. Some circuits had to. So I'm not sure that loosening any restrictions would accomplish what DAs need to do on the ground.
Okay. And then my last one was, all of you had mentioned about the funds being cut for the victim services from the federal government. What was the rationale for that? Or did you even get a rationale?
As I understand it, and I want to first say, don't quote me specifically on this, but the money we were receiving from the federal government came from fines and fees from U.S. attorneys' offices prosecuting certain cases. And I believe it was tied primarily to white collar cases. And because those fines and fees have shrunk, the money that's available has shrunk. That would, again, to get really into the weeds and get the best answer to you, would need to be a question directed at Pete Scandalakis.
Because I believe the forfeitures were already included.
Well, we can't use forfeiture money for salaries.
But if the feds cycle it through the grant process,
Right.
that may negate that.
Correct.
But that also brings up, there is a fourth source for some DAs, and that's forfeiture money. And that there are restrictions, there are reporting restrictions, there are spending restrictions that are codified in state law. And some DAs get a tremendous amount of forfeiture money and some don't, and it varies.
But that cannot go towards salaries.
You can't use it for some.
But there have been times where that forfeiture money, unfortunately, has not been spent correctly, in my humble opinion. It's got to be for training, supplies, vehicles, but now a vehicle doesn't mean a Range Rover. I mean, a vehicle means something practical. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Jones. We're going to take a lunch break, and we have lunch provided down in the Senate mezz, which is down the stairs right at back entrance. If you would please give preference to committee members, witnesses, and my favorite court reporter first, but others, press, and those in attendance are welcome to partake. So those of you that are here, we're gonna break now. I think we'll be back here. Let's just call it, what time we got now? 12:20 now. Let's try to circle back in here 1 o'clock or very shortly after. I know you've had a long day, right? Don't want it to keep you here too long, and I appreciate the time of everybody. We'll reconvene very close to 1, and my intention is we should wrap up the presentations by the district attorneys within 30 minutes max after that. And then we have Representative Misha Maynor is also going to be testifying with us this afternoon. Thank you. We'll be in recess until 1 o'clock.